I want to say hello and welcome you all back to Nick's PNW Experience. Today I'm out in one of my favorite places in the world, the Dundee Hills. And Dundee is actually the town that I grew up in. It's also one of the most iconic AVAs, or American viticultural areas, in the state of Oregon. And it's home to some of the oldest vines in the Willamette Valley. And this is actually one of the oldest vineyards in the Willamette Valley. Now is called the Furioso Vineyard. And I'm here at Furioso about to meet with Jim McGuire. And I could not be more excited to taste these wines, to learn more about their space and this experience. So as you guys are following along, if you could do me one gigantic favor, it really would mean a lot. Just hit that like button if you're watching this on YouTube. Subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment if you've got any other wineries you want me to visit or any questions you want me to ask winemakers in the future. It really does make a big difference. And let's go taste some wine.
How are you?
Doing good. Thanks for having me out.
Thank you for coming.
It's early, maybe a little bit too early to drink some wine, but we're gonna do it anyways.
Okay, we can make that happen.
I appreciate that.
Awesome.
But before we get started, I would love to hear just a little bit about Furioso, how it began, and maybe you can share a little bit about this gorgeous setting that we have behind us.
Absolutely. This is the former Juilliard Vineyard, and it's actually a very well-known vineyard here in Dundee, and many winemakers have been sourcing fruit from this vineyard for years. So what's special about this vineyard is it's one of the oldest vineyards in Dundee.
Right.
We have vines that go back to 1972.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I was 6 to put that in perspective when this vineyard was planted.
And when did the industry start out here?
Officially in 1965 with David Lett, who was affectionately known as Papa Pinot.
Right.
Planting the first Wadensville clones in the Willamette Valley.
Yeah.
Almost 80% of this vineyard is own-rooted Pommard going back to 1989 and 1990.
So the last time I was here, I asked if I could go film out in the vineyard, and the first question he asked me is, have you been any other vineyards today? So,
and the reason for that is because there's this little microscopic bugger called phylloxera.
Ew!
And basically, the vines that come from Europe, which are Vitis vinifera, do not have a defense mechanism to phylloxera because they did not evolve here. Phylloxera evolved here in North America. Our native grapevine, Vitis riparia, makes crappy wine.
Okay.
But it's evolved a defense mechanism to phylloxera. So Vitis riparia's sap is stickier, so it acts like a liquid Band-Aid. So it seals that wound.
Interesting.
So
it potentially here. No, not here.
Not here in this vineyard.
In other vineyards.
Folks right across the hill have it. It will be here eventually.
That's terrifying.
A little bit. So what they figured out back in the early 1800s was that you can take Vitis riparia rootstock, which is resistant to phylloxera, and graft onto it Vitis vinifera, which is the European grapevine. And now you have a rootstock that is resistant to phylloxera but makes great wine.
It's really a special thing, and I'm not sure how much the audience realizes this. I'm literally standing next to some of the oldest vines in the valley dating back to the 70s.
Yep.
And who knows how long they'll be here.
So this harvest, this is where the fruit will come into the sorting table, and we'll have people on each side of a sorting table, and it kind of vibrates. And then you have the fruit coming along. Our winemaker developed this piece of equipment himself. The fruit comes on the outside, and as you look at the clusters, and if they're okay, you put them on the inside of this metal railing, and they keep going down, and then they're going to go up a little, kind of like an escalator for grapes. And then it will go up and go through the destemmer, and go into a 2-ton stainless steel fermenter. And then once that stainless steel fermenter is full, it will go into the winery and fermentation will start. But literally, you're going to be able to be standing right there and watch all of this happen right here and literally be feet away from us, which is kind of unique in the valley.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys realize, that's a pretty amazing thing. Harvest is crazy out here. I remember driving around even just last year, and you see these trucks rolling through town with giant bins of grapes in their beds, and then you go to the wineries to taste, and like there's always this little buzz that's happening over there, but then you're set up over here. Hold on one second, I'm going out.
Do you need to step back?
Nope, I just need to adjust.
Well, the sun's just coming through finally.
Anyway, so you're set up over here tasting wine, and there's all this activity that you never actually really see. And then to be able to look through that window right there to see everything that's happening on this pad right here is a really special thing. Can we move so I'm not blinded anymore?
Sure.
Okay.
So this is the Furioso Vineyard. Our Yamhill Carlton site will be the Trovato Vineyard, named after Giorgio's mother. It's his maiden name, and it means to find in Italian. And he came out here from Washington, D.C. looking to find property to start a vineyard. So we thought that was very apropos. So this is the Juilliard Vineyard. We are in flowering right now. I don't know if Nick can zoom in on the little bunches and see these little white flowers. He'll show you probably that in a minute here. And that's why we were kind of a little worried about the rain that we just had come through, because those little flowers, grapevines are wind pollinated. We don't have to rely on bees or other kind of pollinators. It's actually done by wind. And when we had those thunderstorms here through this last couple of days, those can literally knock the flowers off the grapes. And then that little grape bud does not develop. And you have what we call hens and chicks. So you have some grapes on that bunch that got pollinated and will become a grape berry we can use, and then you'll have these little green acid bombs that don't go anywhere, and those are the chicks, and that can be a bit of a problem during harvest. So rain and hailstorms at flowering, not so good, but our vineyard was only at about 5% when those storms came through, so everything from what I can see here, everything's looking really good, and I think we'll be okay. We're named after our owner, Giorgio Furioso, Italian by birth, and then emigrated here as a child via Montreal. And grew up watching his dad and his grandfather make wine in the garage or the basement. So we always had this dream of one day owning a vineyard. I think the project's a little bigger than he initially anticipated. But he started off as an artist. He was a tenured professor of art at 28. He was running a university art department at 30.
Wow.
And how that ties into all of this is, in addition to having several pieces of his collection here on the walls of the tasting room, the art is actually a piece of art that Giorgio did back in 1978. So the original piece is a piece of watercolor paper, and he heated up a soldering iron and used the hot tip of the soldering iron to burn the paper.
Interesting.
And so that's where this design comes from. Everything we do here will be wine and art combined. The idea sort of for where we're sitting now, this lounge space, it was really interesting when Giorgio told me the story, because what he said was, do you remember those transatlantic ocean liners from like the 20s and the 30s? They had the first class lounge where you could go up and relax with a glass of wine and just look out and see the ship going through the blue waves of the ocean. Well, he had this idea because when you're sitting here, the vineyard literally surrounds us on all three sides. When you look out, you see nothing but vines. That it's kind of like the same thing. It's like that first class lounge on an ocean liner, but you're going through the green waves of the vineyard instead of the blue waves of the ocean.
That's awesome. Well, Jim's a very interesting guy, and he's fun to listen to, but I'm almost having a hard time concentrating on what he's saying, because as I look past you guys in the camera, this view is just stunning. It is relatively overcast today. You've got these giant barreling clouds, and you can see the mountain range on the horizon, dip into the valley, and then back up into the hills over here with what are these 40-year-old vines surrounding us.
Yep. And we're looking due south straight down the Willamette Valley. So we're looking gorgeous. All the way down to where you can't see the Cascades and the Coast Range come together. So it's actually really kind of spectacular.
It's really beautiful. I'll try to film and paint a good enough picture for you guys to kind of understand, but for me, when I go out wine tasting, the place is so important. Obviously the wines need to be enjoyable. They need to be good quality. But for me, it's all about the environment and the experience. And Jim creates an amazing experience with his storytelling ability and his enthusiasm for taking amazing care of his guests. And then now, obviously, they've created this space which is just so welcoming and right in the heart of the Dundee Hills, which is easily one of my favorite spots in the world. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, you guys, that wraps up today's episode of Nick's PNW Experience. I want to thank you for following along as we got to meet Jim and explore the wines and property at Furioso. Would ask that if you like this video, simply hit that like button. It actually has a significant impact on my channel and I really appreciate it. If you guys want to know when new videos come out, different wineries or places that we visit, make sure and subscribe if you aren't already, and leave a comment below with any questions, any suggestions for future episodes. And again, truly appreciate you guys following along as we explore the different amazing places in the Pacific Northwest. And I am out. Peace.